Hello Scale Modeling World, and welcome to YouTube's Scale Modeling channel. Today we're going to focus our attention on part 5 of building the HK 148 scale B-17 series, and we're going to concentrate on assembly of the wings and modifying the engine nacelles so that they will accept these highly detailed, resin 2 detailed 3D printed engines. I've used these engines on all of my builds, and I gotta tell you, they really enhance the appearance of the model, and there's just no comparison between the engines, if you can call them engines, that came with the kit and these 3D printed engines. So let's get started. The wing system on these models have a snap lock system where you insert it, if I can get it right here, you insert it and then push back. And it can be kind of hard to line everything up correctly like that, and then it slides back. So now on the starboard side, it's really tight, and if you're not careful, you're going to crack seams. So here's what I did to alleviate that problem on the starboard side. The port side is not too bad, but the starboard side has got a serious problem with the tolerances. So I sanded this area down a little bit, and then sanded this top, and this top. And that helped a little bit, but what really helped was scraping this bottom right here. That's what helps, scraping the bottom. And it'll go in easier, and actually it, once I build it, I think what's going to happen is when I snap them in place and push back, I'm not going to have to do any seam work here at all because it's a really tight fit. The other thing is that on the bottom of the fuselage, where the wing meets the fuselage, this bottom area here, from here to here, it's raised a little bit. And Dog Models, when he did his build, he pointed this out too. So the top is good. It's the bottom that's a problem. So the way you alleviate that is you cut into this area back here where the top and bottom meet and forward. You see how I did that? Because on this wing, let me show you the difference. See? Didn't have to do it on this wing, but for some reason, this one is a little bit different. So what you want to achieve is to be able to do this, to push this area in a little bit from here to here. And that worked really well. So unfortunately, I don't have it taped together to show you, but you're just going to have to trust my judgment that cutting this down a little bit and this area down, and then you see how I cut those ribs down a little bit, the interior ribs, and I think I'm going to cut these at an angle too, and that should help. So that'll fix that problem. Now, the other problem you're going to have is this engine nacelle fits together fairly well. This side did not. And there's an alignment pin here. If you cut that alignment pin and then see how I opened this area up a little bit, just carved it open right here, so that when you close it up, watch, you see you get a little bit of a shift here, and that's what you need to do. So it'll close up pretty good here. You're still going to have a little bit of a seam here, but you want to, if you don't do what I just showed you, what'll happen is you're going to have a lip on one side, and you want to be able to position it correctly so that both sides butt up against each other, and then hit it with some super glue, medium set super glue, and the super glue will seep in between the glue joints and hold it together. It's got great capillary action. So you're still going to have to do some seam work here, like on all of these seams, but carving this area and removing that alignment pin really made a difference. Now on the port side wing, you don't have that problem. The snap lock is not as tight, although you're going to have to be really careful how you slide this into place so that you don't end up cracking the seam on either the wings or on the fuselage and have to do it again. So, but I didn't have to make any modifications in here. But I probably will, just to make it a little bit easier. I'll go ahead and sand it down here and here. Just remove some of this surface plastic, and on here and here and on this one. And that should help quite a bit in terms of getting this to slide on better. So it's a nice tight fit, which I also pointed out in my tape up of this model. But it's got some real challenges. The other thing is that on the trailing edge right here on this aileron, there are 2 mold injection pins on the inside right about where the X is, and that's preventing that from closing up correctly. So what you need to do is sand those 2 injection pin marks down, and they're on both wings, and once you do that, this bump that occurs right here will disappear. I mean, it's still not what it should be because of the way this whole inside is formed, but you can fill this with super glue and sand it, you'll never know it. The only other point I wanted to make on the wings is these are cloth covered, not metal covered. And for those of us who built the B-17G by Monogram and the F model by Revell, they correctly rendered the cloth detail on this very, very well. Not the trim tab, but on the surface. So they missed that, and they did the same thing on the tail. So those are my only comments on that. So once I get it together, I can go ahead and spray the interior color here. The other thing is there were some injection pin marks on the flaps toward the edge, outside edge, and I went ahead and sanded them down because I'm going to have them slightly open, not a lot, but just slightly open. And you'll see the injection pin marks on the outside, so you need to sand them down. I've got the landing gear bays cleaned up and taped together, and it's a nice tight fit. So I'm going to go ahead and airbrush these parts separately and detail them a little bit. And these are the reserve tanks that, I don't know if this is hydraulics or for oil, but they go on this side and this side, and I'll make those a different color, including I'll have the straps a different color too. Yeah, it'll look good. So yeah, they surprisingly they fit together kind of nice, almost snap into place. I got the landing gear bays painted, weathered, and assembled, and they fit together fairly well. What you have to do after you paint all the individual parts is you need to clean the gluing surfaces really, really good. And that's what I did, and it made a big difference. And this tank is correct in that that spigot does point down. There's actually a hose that connects to the end of that spigot, and it goes that way. So what I did was I used the Synchromate yellow and some burnt metal color here, black, and then did a little bit of dry brushing, and then dusted it with some pastels, and came out pretty good. You're not going to see much once it's closed up and in place. So I used, after I cleaned all the gluing surfaces, this is what I used, the extra thin cement from Tamiya. And you have to, this piece tends to go this way, and so you need to make sure that these two edges touch. And on this side, it's this end that tends to pop up. So, and it leaves a little bit of a crack in there, and I'll go ahead and put some white glue in there to kind of fill that in a little bit. But it came out pretty good. So when you install it into the wing, that's how it looks. There's no interference. Everything closes up fairly well, which is what I checked. I haven't glued this yet. I've just closed it up to check it. But what I did discover is this exterior piece that goes here, it doesn't fit as well once this is in place. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do this. But I'll wait until I glue the wings together and see if I can close this up a little bit. But yeah, Dog Models mentioned this too, and he's correct. Shouldn't have to do this. For a model that costs this much money, they should have either got a better fit on this or made it part of the upper or lower wing. I don't know why they did this separately. But there you have it. So I got some more seam work to do here. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and glue the front first, and then when that's done, I can still separate the back a little bit. Then I'll run some super glue inside here and squeeze it, and then the same thing here to get a nice tight fit. So yeah, I think we're moving along. So the other thing is, make sure that if you paint the interior areas here, that you go ahead and scrape these surfaces too, because this is where the landing gear assembly sits, here, here, and here. And so you need to make sure that that's real strong. So what I did was I positioned it correctly, and you got to make sure it snaps in place. Otherwise, you're going to have a void right there or right there, or worse void than it's there. So you know, it doesn't fit as well as I think the engineers who so diligently designed these parts thought it would fit together. But we'll work with it and see how it goes. So those are my comments on these things, and next thing I need to do is go ahead and glue the wings together and show you how that looks when I'm done. I've got the wings glued together, both wings, and they came out pretty good. So how I did it was I used the slow set super glue, this slow zap here, and I put a little bit of the slow set with my trusty stiff wire applicators right along here. I didn't do all along the seam line, I just kind of did a little bit on these areas here on the lips, and then since that will stay wet for about 2 or 3 minutes, then I put some Testors glue on these 3 interior pins. Now I did it on this one, and I'll talk about this in a second, but I did it on this one but forgot to put glue on the outside one here, and you can hear it move. So make sure that I don't think it's going to cause a problem, but to get a stronger bond with the entire wing, don't forget to put some glue on those 3 pins. So I put super glue along the medium set super glue, this stuff here, with the thin wire applicator all along where the seam was after I taped it really tight together. So came out pretty good. Just using my standard technique of using super glue for all my seam work, because it works really well. And again, it's the capillary action of the super glue seeps down in between the glue joints and creates a really strong bond. So that's this wing. Now on the other wing, I went ahead and did some scraping and sanding, and I used one of my trusty sanding sticks, and then for these areas in here I used one of these thin sticks, and then gave it a coat of silver paint, and you can see where areas where I applied more super glue, there, and there. And then once I get these areas cleaned up, and I'll apply some more Tester silver paint, then I can go ahead and use Flexifile here and kind of wet sand the edges and restore that curved shape. And then what I'll do is there's 2 very petite engraved lines here and here, and I'll go ahead and use this razor saw to go ahead and restore those lines. So yeah, coming along pretty good. And then once this is done, then I'll figure out how I'm going to put this piece, this insert, in place right here. I think what I'm going to do is I'll put some tester's glue right along, just tiny drops right along here, and that'll hold it in place. I'm going to push it this way so that the larger void is on this edge here, because this would be easier to work with, clean that up, than this. So I think that's how I'll do it. And I think once I prime this area back here and this area, this curved area here, I'll just put some Elmer's glue and that'll seal that. But I'm going to have to do something here and along this edge. So that's probably how I'll do it. I wish they hadn't engineered it this way, but we'll figure out the best way to deal with those seams. I've got the insert on the port wing on the inboard engine nacelle glued into place and contoured, and it came out pretty good. And you can see right there, that's the super glue bead that's been sanded down here and along here. I tried to get a tighter fit, but it just didn't work. Now, this void right here, along here, what I plan on doing, it's right there. After I prime the surface, I'll go ahead and fill that with some white glue and then contour it with a damp Q-tip. So, and I'll show you the other one when it's done. It's about the same thing. The fit isn't all that great, and you're going to lose some surface detail. So there you have it. Now, the instructions would have you install these pieces before you put the rest of the engine cowling together. And the problem with that is then you got to cover it and mask it. So the way to get around that is to go ahead and cut those ends off here so that it'll just fit right in here, and then you can do that after you put it all together. And I did the same thing with this one here that goes on the outboard part. So once this piece is on, you're not going to see it. That's all you'll see. Well, let me get this in place here. And this piece goes here, and that's all you're going to see. So yeah, that works really, really well. The other thing I did was, since I plan on using the 3D printed engines by Resin 2 Details, what I did was I positioned these pieces and then marked around this pin here and then just cut it off so that it would be a flat surface, because I'm going to glue a disc here so that the Resin 2 Detail engine can be glued into place. So I'll go ahead, now that all I have left to do here is just polish the leading edge with some steel wool pads, and we're ready to go. So once that's done, I'll glue these in place. As I said in my tape up, there's a little bit of wiggle here, but if you put some tester's glue right on this rim and then set it in place, you'll get a little bit of working time, and that'll allow you to position this properly. And then you just let it set. So that's what I'm going to do. But first I need to polish the wing, clean it up, and then this wing will be done. So it's coming along pretty good. The kit's engines are not very accurate, and I'm going to modify the cowlings and the propellers so that I can use Resin 2 Details 3D printed B-17 engines, which will look really, really nice and enhance the appearance of this model. So the first thing you have to do is change the inside diameter of the propellers here, because it's rather large. So what I did was I used 2 different diameters of evergreen tubing, glued them into place. I still need to drill this out to the proper diameter for this right here, but what's important is I got it closed up, and so now I just need to drill a hole to the proper diameter. Got all 4 of them done, and I just used super glue to glue everything in place. So yeah, it was a simple fix, and they'll look really, really nice because these propellers are nicely done, and between the propellers and this 3D printed engine, it's going to look really good. I've got both wings all done. All the seam work has been completed, and I rescribed these indentations, these engraved lines here, with my handy dandy panel scriber, and it worked really, really well. So everything's been smoothed out, polished, and then what I did was I used these kit supplied engines, if you could call them that, to position these pieces on the cowlings, and they don't fit very well. They kind of rock. And so to fix that, what I did was I took flat nose pliers, needle nose pliers. This is what I used for photo etch bending, and spread the engine flaps out just a little bit, and that set these correctly on top of the engine nacelles. So, and then what I did was I put slow set super glue around the rim, positioned the piece in here like so, set it in place, and there's a little bit left to right wiggle, and so you need to make sure that that's straight up, and that piece right there, that indentation for this exhaust manifold is sitting correctly. So then what I did was I measured and cut these stubs that come out that slide into the back sides of these engines. I cut them down so you can see that, and then I made these 1-inch discs, 1-inch diameter discs out of 20 thousandths plastic, and placed them over the top and glued them in place with Tester's glue. And the reason that I did that is so that you get to do this. Now, these are the Resin 2 detailed engines, and I gotta tell you, there isn't even any comparison between these two. You get the correct number of cylinders, you get all the wiring, the fuel pump, the oil pump, everything. And so yeah, and it fits perfectly, 20 thousandths, and the engine, and it leaves just a little bit of wiggle room for me, so that with the back side of the engine with 10 thousandths plastic sheet super glued to it, I can use Tester's glue to glue this to this here, and it gives me a little bit of working time to properly position it. I did it on the B-24J, I did it on the B-17G and the C-47 models, and now I've done it on this. So that's how you do it. So all I have left to do now on this wing is to glue this piece in place, and we're done. So these will be ready to be primed and painted, and they'll look pretty good. So I spent a lot of time working on these engines because it was really, really important to get the appearance of the accurate looking engines correct, and to get them to sit correctly on top of these engine nacelles. So I really like how it turned out. So it's really going to enhance the appearance of the model. So again, I just need to put some tester's glue on here, set that in place, and both wings are done. I've been working on the horizontal stabilizers, and I've got this one just about done. See, the silver paint allowed me to add more super glue in areas where I had missed. And so when I go ahead and sand this, it'll, when the paint disappears, the seam is fixed. So here's how the other one looks. You can see the super glue right along the seam and back here. So I ran a bead, a medium set, all the way around here. This stuff right here, with a thin wire applicator right here. And I'll probably have to do the same thing here, a second coat. So on the trailing edge, I just used the sanding stick, and when I got to about here and worked my way around, I switched to the Flexifile. And again, the Flexifile maintains the curvature of the leading edge of the wing. I didn't do that on the tail on the Monogram G B-17, I had to go back over it again with the Flexifile to get to reshape the leading edge. So if you use a Flexifile the first time, you won't have that problem. And I always wet sand, and what I'll do is I'll put a little water on this. You can see where I got just enough on here to do this, and then I'll swap it out for the main wings and do the same thing there. But that's what happens. The grit comes off. And if you wet sand, they'll last longer. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this one, and then the horizontal stabilizers will be done. And the fit on the side of the fuselage is nice and tight on the upper area. I don't have to do anything. On the bottom, it's probably around a 64th of an inch, a really, really tiny void. And once it's primed, I'm just going to fill it with some Elmer's glue and reprime it, and that'll take care of that. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. I've been working on the wheels, and the same technique that I used on the Monogram B-17G, I used on this one, and it worked really, really well. So I went ahead and used Tester's glue on the locating pins, just put tiny drops just to glue it together. And then just on the tread heads here, you can see tiny drops of super glue, medium set super glue. This stuff right here. And the super glue it flows really well, so it covered these raised treads and got in between the seams here, which you really can't see. So then what I did was I used this sanding stick right here and just hit the tops of the treads where I had placed super glue. So now, by doing that, I was able to preserve the tread detail. And of course, I use silver paint here to check the seam work, and it works pretty good. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty good. Now, on the tail wheel, there's no tread work, it's just round. So what I did was I used, again, Tester's glue on the locating pins, and then ran a bead of super glue around the seam, and then used a Flexifile and just very carefully wet sanded the super glue till it disappeared. And what the Flexifile does is it maintains the round shape of the wheel. So this came out real good. So now it's ready. There's a little bit here that I missed, but I'm not going to worry about it because that's the flat side and you're never going to see that. So yeah, all I need to do now is do to this wheel what I did with the other main wheel with the sanding stick, and we're done. It came out good. A really nice detail. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed part 5 and all the things I showed you on how to modify the engine nacelles so they will accept the Resin 2 Detail 3D printed engines. And in part 6, we're going to concentrate on painting all of the interior parts and giving them a little bit of weathering. So with that, have a great evening. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. And if you get the chance, visit our website at www.mikeashley.com. And happy scale modeling.